Hello and welcome back to What Jack has made. In this video, we're going to be covering a new experimental, it's becoming more standard now, operator in JavaScript known as optional chaining. Now, to illustrate optional chaining, I've built out a simple React application in Code Sandbox, which is a header menu system which renders out the logo and then an array of header menu items. Now, in a standard React application, we're doing a couple of things. We've constructed the menu value and then passed it in as a prop. And then what we're doing within the header menu itself is we're creating a value called hasMenu, which we will expect to be true. And it returns true if menu was passed as a prop value and if the menu length is greater than 0. We're also then going down to looping over the menu itself, so the array, and we're grabbing out the href property for each object and using it as a href value in the anchor. And then as text, we're using the title value, and then we're converting that to uppercase using the toUpperCase method. So this code is quite clean and it works well. But there's a couple of things that we can now do with the optional chaining method, or operator rather, which is we can go ahead and start removing the references to double and. So the reason we're doing double and is because if menu isn't defined, then when we try and call on it, we'll get an error. I'll show you that now. So if we go ahead and get rid of menu, we won't have any issues other than our menu doesn't render. But in our application, if we just went ahead and checked if menu.length is greater than 0, we'll get an error. And this is because menu isn't defined by props. So when we destructure props and get menu isn't defined, so we can't get the length property on it. But with our new optional chaining operator, we can go ahead and conditionally check length if it is defined. So when we do menu $.length, if menu is undefined, then we will ignore looking at length because length doesn't exist on undefined. So that's one way of checking against properties. And you could do this with an object property. It doesn't have to be a length property. But if we go ahead and throw back in our menu, we'll now look at how we can conditionally, optionally chain a JavaScript method if a value is available. So down in our map function, we are calling item title and checking if it's true. And if it's true, then we are converting it to uppercase. So if I went ahead and got rid of the about title, then we get no error, and the title isn't present, so we don't input any value inside. We don't call the method. But if we went ahead and got rid of item title check to make sure the value is there, then we'll get an error because item title is undefined for our third object. But what we can actually go ahead and do is we can add in a question mark for .title, which won't fix the error. And then we can go ahead and do a question mark to uppercase. So now we're optionally chaining the method value if title is defined. And because title isn't defined, we're not calling the toUpperCase method. So this is great because now we can just go ahead and skip the value as opposed to throwing an error in our application. And this is quite important in the case where you have like a CMS being pulled into your React application, where the title might not always be defined by the moderator or the content editor. So if we go ahead and add in title about again, we now have about rendering. We can get rid of this ugly red border. And we have our application as it was at the start. But as you can see, it's a lot more cleaner, or it's a lot easier to maintain because we're doing menu question mark instead of menu. it just means that we don't have to do any sort of deep checks to make sure that object keys are present or that values are defined. Instead, we can, chain them and then see if the value is present. And based on that, we can call the method or call the value. Now, this isn't supported in every browser. If we go over to Can I Use, you can see we've got 77% support globally. And this is because of older versions of Firefox, Chrome, and Internet Explorer. But as the time goes on, we will be able to use this in a vanilla JavaScript application. But for the time being, you might want to look at using Babel or plugins for frameworks like Gatsby or Next, where you can use this new optional chaining operator in your modern applications today. Now, if for whatever reason you didn't think my explanation was good, which is fair enough, you can go ahead and check out the documentation for the optional chaining method on Mozilla Developer Network, where they have a couple of examples where you can see how nested values can be called conditionally based on the optional chaining operator. And again, it's showing how you'd be able to call methods based on if the value is present or not. And yeah, this kind of goes over kind of what we just did just now, where we're getting rid of this double ampersand check. And instead we're using the optional chaining method, which just makes the whole application a lot easier to maintain, especially when you have a really deep nested object value that you're trying to get a hold of. So that's everything for the video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.